So good morning, everybody. Welcome to Art 195, 3D Modeling for Animation, Fall Semester 2021. Just a reminder for all of you that your reboot character is due this week. We've completed him. And if you have any questions, please let me know, and I will try to answer them best I can and help you if you're having any issues completing him. The next assignment that you should begin working on, which we'll be doing the next few weeks, will be a toy assignment. And I'll talk about that more on Wednesday. It should be a very simple toy, not complicated at all. We're focusing on the surfaces. We're focusing on the lighting and the staging to make something simple look very realistic. That's the whole goal. So I don't want you to spend a lot of time modeling it. So it could be something like a simple chess piece, you know, the pawn, or if you want to try something more complex, you can. It could be a simple child's toy that's for an infant or a toddler. It could be a little wooden train, any number of things or possibilities. And I do have a few samples on my website you're welcome to take a look at. For those of you who are working in Blender, many of you have already turned in the hammer assignment. Should be working on the donut assignment and completing the first level and working on the second level now. Okay, I believe it has a total of 4 levels that you should be working on. So that's where we're at with that. What I want to focus on today now is to introduce new tools. And those new tools will be under the Multiply tab. There are some really useful ones. You'll notice that most of them are grayed out right now because I don't have an object to apply them to. But the modify tools are more often than not ways of adding geometry to a very simple object. So let's go ahead and start with a simple box. I'll just go ahead and I'm going to reset and activate like so. And if you recall what we can do here, let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit so we can see this a little bit better. And I'm going to show this from perspective so it looks a little bit more three-dimensional by turning it a tad from a 3/4 to a 3/4 view. Zoom in even a little bit more, and we'll zoom in on these a little bit more too. Now, if you recall, if you wanted to add fillets or rounded corners, whatever you want to call them, we can add a radius here, but it adds it universally all the way around. So actually, if you wanted it kind of a chamfer, I think what it's called, or a bevel, like so, beveled edge, all the way around, you could do that. And then if you want to add radius segments, we can do that, and that rounds it off. So this is a good example of maybe for your toy assignment to do a die or a pair of dice. That would be ideal. And we will be covering on Wednesday the Boolean modeling. So that would be a good way to do that. But I don't want to do that today. I don't want to add any radius. I don't want to add any segments. We're going to do this in a different fashion today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the box. And we can work with points, edges, or polygons. So let's say, for example, I only wanted to add a curve to one edge, and that's it. So if I were to switch from point mode to edge mode and select just one edge. So I'll select the front edge right here. And then what I can do is I can go under the Multiply tab, that down there, that up there. So let's select the Multiply tab. And what I want to do is I'm going to select the rounder tool. The chamfer tool does pretty much the same thing, but I think the rounder tool is one that you'll use more often. So I'm selecting it, make sure that I have the numeric requester up. And you'll notice what it does. It's rounding just that side. Now, the inset distance is set to, by default here, 1 meter. So if I dial that way, way, way back, I'll use the spinner here. There we go. Now you can see it's only rounding that one edge, and that's it. So if you wanted, all 4 edges, then maybe I would select the top polygon. But right now, I just wanted that one edge. And that allows me to do that. So it allows me to add the number of segments, and you'll add, use the minimum number of segments that you need. If I reduce the number, it looks more chiseled. Notice that it goes back to 1. And if I draw back to maybe 4, it looks a little bit, you notice the polygons a little bit more. It looks a little bit chunkier, for lack of a better word. And you can go ahead and add a whole bunch, boatload of them if you want, but be careful, you may not need a whole bunch. So that's that. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off and deselect and undo. So as I said, let's go ahead and deselect the edges, and instead let's use polygons. And you'll see what I have here, that if I just select this top polygon and I use the rounder tool. Okay. Now what I can do again is I can go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and activate. And you can see that it's rounding all 4 corners, but it leaves edges, but it leaves the bottom intact. It leaves it alone as crisp polygons at 90-degree angles. Okay. Now this is edges selected. We can also select points. So if you've looked at a die, it normally only has the corners that are slightly rounded. So let's look at that next, so you can see what we're doing here. So I'll turn that off, I'll undo. And this time I'm going to deselect the polygon, and instead I'm going to switch to point mode, and I'm going to select the 4 points. Or actually, I'll just select the 4 points. I'm holding down the Shift key as I click each one. There we go. Now let's use the rounder tool again. And I want to switch to points instead of edges. And let's see what I get here. It should round it off. So let's go ahead and change the inset distance here a little bit. Let me go ahead and activate. There we go. There we go. So notice it's just rounding the corners. It's like you've taken a belt sander or sandpaper and just rounded the corners and nothing else. So the rounder tool, I have found, can be super, super helpful. And again, you can increase, and if you want to smooth it off, you add the number of segments that it adds. So that can be a really, really useful tool. Now, the one above that is the Bevel Tool. And we've used the Bevel Tool, but again, it won't hurt to explain the difference between bevel and smooth shift. Why they're separated like this, I don't know. I really don't know. We can also use the thickness tool, which I find to be helpful from time to time. But there's a whole bunch of these different ways of adding geometry that can be very helpful in creating more interesting and more realistic looking model for yourself. Starting with very, simple basic shapes. So let's use the Bevel Tool. And if I select a polygon, you have to use polygon mode. So let's switch back to polygon. If I select a polygon and I hit B for bevel, okay, I can go ahead, and the way I have taught you is a couple of different ways. If I just click, it's added geometry. And now if I hit T for move and I move it up, either from, I mean, I can move it from the perspective view, but it'd be probably better if I moved it from the back or the right view, and I pull that up. Notice that I have added geometry to it now. So I can pull that up, and if I hit B for bevel again, I can add more geometry to that. Okay, so it's a way of, you know, starting with a very simple object. We're starting with a cube for with 6 sides, 6 polygons. And now let's go ahead and turn off bevel. And let's deselect. Hold on here. And let's hit the tab key to see what that looks like. So it sort of looks like a funky kind of potato kind of shape. And because by, you know, sticking with 4-pointed polygons or quads, we can continue to add all kinds of geometry. I can go ahead and I can select this polygon now, and I can hit B for bevel. And if you would prefer to go ahead and select activate, you can, and you can check, and you can change the inset, and you can, you know, change the shift. But I prefer to just click and like so, and then go ahead and turn it off, and now hit T for move. Let's move it forward like so. And before you know it, you can create some interesting shapes. Just selecting one polygon. But now if I select 2 polygons, and this is true for when we were building the hand, this is something that I should point out to you. So let me go ahead and turn off move. And I'm going to select these 2 polygons. And I'm going to hit B for bevel. So now I want to show you the difference between bevel and smooth shift. And I'm bouncing around a little bit here, but all of these extend tools are really, really helpful for starting, as I, you know, it doesn't hurt to repeat multiple times. Start with very basic geometry and then add to it to create something quite complex. Because later this semester, I will show you some videos on creating a character head for a cartoon. And he starts with a basic box model, and he builds and builds and builds and ends up with something really quite remarkable, using mostly bevel, some smooth shift, and a lot of point manipulation and that sort of thing. So let me go ahead and use the bevel on this, click. But now notice what happens. Notice that they are separate entities. Okay. Now if I hit T for move and I move them out like so, and let's go to perspective view, you can see that they remain as separate polygons. But what if I wanted in the end to treat them the same, all as one unit? So let me go ahead and turn off move. Let me deselect, and let's undo and go back. Let's go back again. Now with both of them selected like so, instead if I use smooth shift and I click, now I didn't want to do that. What did I select? I selected smooth scale probably. I just wanted smooth shift and click. Notice that it treats them as one unit. So now when I hit T for move and I pull it out, see how it treats it as one. So I'm adding geometry. And that was true for the hand too. And another, let's do something else with that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off move, deselect, and I'm just going to kill the whole thing. And instead, I'm going to go back to create, and I want to use the sphere instead of a box. So let's select the ball. Let's go ahead and I'm going to start, and I'm going to reset, and I'm going to activate. So I have a 1 meter ball here, and let's zoom in a bit so we can see this a little bit better. So as an example for using, get this moved up here. The difference between bevel and smooth shift was something like this. So for example, if I were to select a handful of polygons here, and then come up to select and say select loop. And now if I hit B for bevel, okay, and now let's go ahead and select shift, and it pulls them out all uniformly. And notice that I have what I have here. Okay. I have each little quad pulled out independently of one another. But let's say, for example, for your spaceship, you wanted to create a flying saucer. So let's go ahead and undo that. Undo that again. Actually, let me redo that. Let's bring that back. So let me select these polys again. Whoops, I didn't want, oh, yeah, look at that. When I have bevel selected and it's beveling the whole thing. Remember, if I said, if nothing is selected, then everything is selected. That's really wild. That's not exactly what I wanted to do, but that still, let's go ahead and turn off B for bevel. And instead, I'm going to go ahead and I want to select the polygons, and I'm going to select a loop again. So select loop, but this time under multiply, I'm going to select smooth shift. Okay, so let's go ahead here and let's activate. And let's go ahead and let's change the offset and drag it out. Like so. And you can see that it's treating them all as a single unit, not separate n-gons or quads, I should say. So now I can go ahead and I can turn that off. Okay, I can go ahead and deselect the polys. I could go ahead and hit the tab key. And you can see that you have the beginnings of a top or a little flying saucer or something like that. And I could go back again, and I can select these polygons, and I could again go ahead and say select loop, and I could scrunch them all together. So let's hit H for stretch. We can pull them together a little bit like so. And then if I wanted to go ahead and I wanted to stretch it out even further, we could do that. And I can go ahead and I can select Shift H for size. And from the top view, we could go ahead and size these out like so. And you have your little flying saucer here. Okay. Pretty cool. So again, starting with very basic shapes and adding geometry to them. We use the rounder tool for a variety of things. We use bevel, which bevel is used a lot. Bevel, B for bevel is your friend. And we used smooth shift. Smooth scale is very similar to that. So I won't labor on that, but let's go ahead and let's try some others. I will get to extrude and lathe in a little bit. They require that you use a two-dimensional flat plane for those. But instead, let's try thicken for a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect. So I'm going to hit T for move. There we go. And deselect these polys. And I'm going to go ahead and just kill this. And I'm going to come back to a box again, just to show you how this works. I'll make a box. Let's go ahead and activate and turn it off. And let's again zoom in a little bit so we can see this a little bit better. So what if I wanted to create an open box? So I'm zooming in a little bit, and I'm going to select this polygon, and I'm going to kill it. I can either hit Command X to cut it, or I can hit K for kill. And again, you can see on the inside of this. Okay. So what I want to do now is let's go ahead and let's select Thicken. So I'm going to go under Multiply, and I'm going to select Thicken. And let's go ahead, and the amount, we can change the number of segments. I'm just going to select one segment. And let's go ahead and let's make this 50 millimeters. Let's try that. And notice how it's given it thickness. So, you know, very rarely in the real world, you have something that is paper thin, or even if it is paper thin, it does have weight or it does have thickness to it. So you can see here, it's taken that, you know, so for making simple things like boxes, for helmets and that sort of thing, if you want to actually give it, you know, substance, then the Thicken tool is a nice one to use. Okay. So we've used Thicken, we've used Smooth Shift, we've used Bevel, we've used the Rounder tool. Let's go to Extrude and Lathe. Okay. So I'm going to go back again, and I'm just going to go ahead and turn off Thicken, since we've already used that. And I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to start with a simple disc, I think. And I'll show you what Extrude does, and then I'll show you what Lathe does. But to use the Extrude and the Lathe, you need a two-dimensional flat disc, or a square, or any shape you want, but it needs to be flat, two-dimensional poly or N-gon. So I'm going to start with a simple object here. Instead of 24 sides, I'm going to go to 8 sides. And you'll see why in just a minute. Because this can be to drive the point home that we can have any shape you want. So I'm going to make this 250, select all, 250 millimeters. I just want it to be round, 250 millimeters. Whoops. Okay, so I have a flat two-dimensional plane. And now you'll see, remember that anytime you create something like this, it's automatically one-sided. Now, what I can do is I can make this more of a star-like shape. I can switch to point, and I can select these interior 4 points. And I can use the size tool, Shift H, make sure that it's from the center of selection. I can pull it in, and here's my little 4-pointed star. Turn off size, deselect points. And now I'm ready to use the Extrude tool. So I can go back under Multiply, and I can select Extrude. So I'll select Extrude. And now what you do from the top view, I could also do it from the right view, is I can click and I can drag, and notice that it's making it three-dimensional now. And now when I look at this from, so imagine, I don't know how many of you worked with Play-Doh when you were younger, and they had these little kits of the little tools that you could use. You'd put a chunk of Play-Doh in it, and you'd press the lever down and extrude it out. That's basically what we're doing here. We're extruding it. So again, just two-dimensional flat poly. It can be, 3 points. It can be 4, a quad. It can be an N-gon, whatever you want, but a flat plane. And then from, depending on how you want it extruded, you work at a view that's perpendicular to it, and you can just click and drag and pull it out. Now, if I were to pull it in the opposite direction, like so, let's see how that works. I guess maybe they fixed it. It looks like they fixed it. In the past, what you would see sometimes is the interior of the shape. And when I use the lathe tool, that also might be the case. That it would turn the object inside out and you'd have to flip the polygons. But right now they seem to be working quite nicely. Then again, you just turn it off and you have your three-dimensional form. This works really well with type. If you're going to use type and you want three-dimensional type, what you can do is you can use a program like Adobe Illustrator and create some really elegant logo, or create your words with that. Export it as an EPS file, an old version, not the current version, and then import that EPS file. And then you can use the Extrude tool and Bevel to create some pretty elaborate looks for that. So let's go back and let's go back to a simple four-pointed star. And I'm going to move it over now. I'm going to hit T for move. And I want it to move it like so. You'll see why in a minute. Now what I want to do is I want to use the lathe tool. So the lathe tool can be used for creating springs. It can be creating coiled hoses and all sorts of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select lathe now. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to activate. And notice what it did. This is a good example of it spinning in the wrong direction. Notice how it appears to be inside out. We're looking inside it. So instead of spinning at 360 degrees, if you see that, just put in a minus. And now it's right side out. And by default, it goes to 360 degrees, but you don't need to lathe something 360 degrees. If you want, we look at the top here, I can click on here and notice how I can pull this out. So if I wanted only a half, or you can leave it at whatever. If you wanted it 3/4, 1/4, it's a slight arc. And then you can also change the axis. You can change the number of sides. Right now there are 24 sides. So depending on how smooth you want it or how coarse you want this to be. Notice, by playing with these tools, it's really useful to see the results you get, and that will give you ideas, not necessarily for what you have in mind now, but sometime in the future, you'll think to yourself, you know what, how can I create that shape? And you go, oh, I remember when I was playing with the lathe tool and I got this result when I did this, such and such. And now when I go back and I add the number of sides, it smooths it out. So this is typical for creating springs and that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn the lathe off. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kill it. And this time I'm going to go back and I'm going to create a simple disc. So I'm going to use the disc. I could use the ball. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to click and drag like so. And I'm going to change it. I'm going to go back up from 8 to 24. And I want to make sure that each of these are identical. So I'm going to move the center over just a little bit so that it's aligned along the x-axis. And then the radius, I'll make this 212 millimeters and 212. I just want it to be perfectly round, that's all. Okay. So I'll go ahead and I'll turn that off. Now I'm going to go back to multiply. And I want to use the lathe tool again. Okay, and let's go ahead and activate. And it spins it around to the last setting. Now, instead of minus, I'm going to put minus 1800 degrees. So we can actually exceed the 360 limit. But they overlap one another, and that's not exactly the look we're going for. What we want to do now is we want to change the offset. So now when I change the offset and I move this up like so, you can see that I'm getting that look. It's not really a spring, but when I add the number of sides, I will get that. So let me zoom out from here. Now, let's move this down a little bit. So now watch when I increase the sides. The same applies when I have just two sides, you know, when I really increase the number of sides, notice that I get the spring. So now when I change the offset, if I want it really a tight spring or one that's stretched out, or as I said, it could be a coiled telephone, an old time, telephone cable or electrical cord. That would be how you would do that. So 1800 degrees gives me 1, 2, 3, and 2 halves. So just taking 360 degrees and multiplying it. So again, it's taking the lathe tool and taking a two-dimensional polygon, flat polygon, lathing it and multiple times, around 360 degree, and then changing the offset to get this look. So that would be another thing that we could do. Okie doke. Let's go back and let's try. I'm going to go back again. I'm going to turn off lathe. So that's basically lathe. That's basically, using it a variety of different ways. And we used extrude. They're really kind of, variations of the same thing. So let me go back again. Let's undo that. Let's go ahead and quit that. And I'm going to hit A to reset everything. I'm going to go back. And let's try the chamfer tool. And let's try some of the others. So let's try the box again. I'm going to go ahead and reset, activate. There we go. And let's zoom in a little bit because I don't use them that much, but let's go ahead and give it a whirl and see here. See what we get. Okay. So I'm going to select the top polygon. No, I had points selected, so I need to make sure they select polygons. There we go. Now let's go back under multiply. Let's select chamfer. Okay. Now let's go ahead and select, we have fast preview selected, show help text if you wish. And let's go ahead and activate. Okay. Nothing, because we don't have any amount set. As soon as I start changing this, notice that this is, it won't round corners, but that's also, we could have done that with a rounder tool. You just remove the number of rounded edges. So a chamfer is just slicing a corner off of it. So sometimes that's the look that you're going for. It's limited. And again, like I said, there's a lot of redundancy built in to this program, as well as a number of Adobe products. The tools are very similar to one another. They just are slight variations of one and another. And that's all that is. So it basically bevels it. And then it takes the top polygon and it reduces the size of it a little bit. So that could be done, different ways. You could have used bevel and then taken the polygon and resized it. We've done that before too. Okay. We can also select the top polygon, and let's try multi-shift. Let's see what we get with that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and we can change the inset amount. See how that's going in this time? We can have it go out if you wish, in or out. And then the shift amount, you can either go up or we can go down. To create that inset. So I hope you guys are thinking now in terms of what kind of object you want to create for yourself. A very simple box or tool. I mean, it could be a jack in the box. Like I said, it could be a die or it could be a pair of dice. And to create the indents for the dots, we'll do that on another day. So let's move down to do some of the other things here. So let's say I want to use the mirror tool. We've done that before. When we created Reboot's arms and legs, we made sure that we had them all on one layer and we moved them. We centered everything up. So let me go ahead and hit T for move because I want to go ahead and move this over to the right a little bit, like so, because I'm going to mirror this along the x-axis. So if I want an exact duplicate of this, I could mirror it along the x-axis, along the y or the z, or I can select the mirror tool and I can select, go ahead and reset, activate, and by default, it selects the x-axis. So, and it uses the center, the 0, 0, 0, or the 0 coordinate between of the x-axis to do that. So there's really no, especially when you're designing characters, you're going to want to mirror rather than have to build two parts of the same thing, but just the mirror object, the mirror side of it. So that's how that works. If I go ahead and I undo that and I select mirror X, it will automatically select the X. If I hit mirror Y, it will do that. Now, it's really on top of one another. So I don't know that I would want to do it that way. If I was going to mirror it along the Y, what I would want to do is I would want to hit T for move. And let's go ahead and move this down so that it's below the x-axis, or I could just move it over like so. Now I want a mirror image of this, but I want it along the y-axis. So I go ahead and I hit mirror, and notice how it just created a mirror image of it. So, these tools could make a lot of what could result in a lot of tedious work kind of much easier and go much easier and much quicker. So let's go ahead and I'm going to hit FN, F2 to center this up. And let's select the clone tool. Now, when this comes up, this is interesting. So it's similar to an array tool. So we can do that. Let's decide the number of clones we want. So I'll just say I want 11. And then you want the offset. Now I made this box 1 meter. So offset here, let's make the offset along X 2. Let's make offset along the Y 2. And let's make offset along the Z 2 meters. Okay. We can change the scale along the X, Y, or Z. We can change the rotation. And the center, we want to make sure the center is at 0, 0, 0. So now when I do that, we should go ahead. I don't want move. I didn't do that. Let's turn off move. Let me try that again. Let's see. let me bring up my numeric requester. And I have nothing. So let's try that again. Let me go ahead and try clone. And let's go ahead and center. Let's try that again and see if I get it. No. Okay. So I'll bet. Undo. Instead, let me try the array tool. There we go. The array tool and the clone are really similar to one another. But again, if you're going to create a row of columns, so for example, we have the 3 count along the X, along the Y, I'm going to make it 3 and Z 3. Now offset 1 meter, Y 1 meter, and let's see for fast preview. Let's see what we get. Okay. Let's go ahead and activate. Yeah. That's not what I wanted. I got to go ahead and I got to change the X, Y, and Z. Instead of offset 1 meter, let's select 2 meters. There we go. Let's select 2 meters. And let's select 2 meters. Because if it's only 1 meter, they're going to butt right up against one another. You can see that I have a whole array of these cubes. Now you can also use a radial array. So let me undo. And let's undo again. Let's go back here. Turn off array and let me undo. Come on. So I go back to the original. And let's select array again. And I'm going to move this off. And I remember that. Let's go ahead and T. Let's move this, offset this a little bit like so. From the top view. Okay. Now let's try the array again. Okay. So I'm going to select array. And with it being offset, now you can see that it works a little bit better because it was using 0, 0, 0 as the center. Go back. Come on. There we go. So you can create some interesting things. But now instead, what if we were to use radial? So this is rectangular. This is radial, automatic. So I want it off. Let me undo this. So let me undo. Let's turn this off.
Are you done?
No.
Sure.
No, I have another few minutes.
Okay.
So let me turn that off. Let's undo. I'm talking to my students.
Oh, sorry.
So let's go ahead and select this again. Let's try array. There we go. Now I had to redo it. So now we have this set and we have radial count is 8. Let's just say 6. So if you wanted, a number of objects, it could be columns, and then, whatever you want. In fact, in my, since we're running up against the hour here, one of the ways that I use the array tool for mine is that when I created the, let me show you here, my installation, my online installation. Let me go ahead and get this here. And bring up my gallery here. So when I was doing this installation here, And if I click to the next one, this one here, that was precisely how I got all of those. You know, I only made a group of 4 of these. And then from that group of 4, I created an array so that I could fill an entire room with them following a grid. So this can work really nicely. And again, it can make short order of things that normally take a long, long time to do. If you were to actually copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, it would just be too much. Okay, so let me move that back up. We got a few more minutes here. So let's turn off array. Let's undo. And let's go back to multiply again and see what else we have. Array, place math. We have the extender plus. So one of the things, let me try that one. I haven't had much success with that in the past. So let's give it a try as one of our last stitch efforts. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this. And I'm going to just simply create a flat plane here. So I'll go ahead from top view. I'm going to create a box and I want to set everything up here. And I'm just going to create a little simple box here. Like so. And now what I'm going to do from perspective view is I want to select an edge. So let's select the edge. And now over on multiply, let's try the extender tool, extender plus. And now what I can do is I can click and no. Yeah, I'm having troubles. I'll have to do this for the next time. I guess I turned off that. There we go. Now let's go ahead and try extender plus. And let's go back. Let's hit T for move and see what I get. Now, like I said, I've had trouble with this. There we go. Okay. Let's move the Y up. Y. There we go. So now it's moving. So let's move it from, let's work that from the front view and right click and drag. And I can pull another one off and right click and drag. No, it's not going to allow me to do that. So let's click another one. Let's apply. And let's use it again. Let's move it up again. Apply. I should be able to, keep you doing that. I thought I could do that with the right mouse, like with Bevel. Extender. Well, that's extended it by just selecting an edge. So, and that's it. Well, I'll leave that for now, for today. And that's it. We've gone through most of these today. We've gone through the array, the mirror tool. There's more of these down here too, if you want to use the clone. Clone is similar to array. You can use some others here, point clouds, radial arrays, helix, spin it, similar to lathe. Next time we'll get in, before we get into the Boolean modeling, I'm going to get into cut, divide, and some of the others that we have in here, and some that are grayed out. So unless you guys have any questions for me today, Let's go ahead and turn off the move tool. And deselect. Okie doke. Daisy, do you have any questions for me today? We'll call it a day. Yes, no? No, you're good? Okay. Okie doke. Then I will hopefully see you Wednesday. Okay? And I'll stop my recording now. Okay, bye-bye.